As the German military prepared to face Russia's underappreciated but formidable tank forces in Operation Barbarossa, Hitler recognized the need for a tank-hunting close support aircraft. The Henschel HS 129 was supposed to be Germany's plunger knocker or tank hunter, but it was anything but. Despite being piloted by record-breaking airman Rudolph Heinz and taking out 80 tanks, the plane struggled to achieve widespread success during World War II. Unfortunately for the Luftwaffe, the HS 129 was rushed to the battlefield, burdened with requirements and design decisions that doomed its capabilities from the start. Development was too slow, production was flawed, and the aircraft was never built in sufficient quantities to impact any significant global battle. Adolf Hitler did not want to fight a trench war with slow progress like World War I. He wished to see Germany advance quickly and decisively through the chessboard, reclaiming and expanding Germany's historical territory. A tank hunter was needed to support ground troops in his strategy. Because the targets were frequently ill-equipped in the years leading up to World War II, European countries concluded that bomber aircraft were critical to disrupting enemy logistics and equipment. Dive bombers were more dangerous to tactical objectives and high-value targets than ground troops. When World War II broke out, dive bombers played an important role in the conflict. However, after serving in the Spanish Civil War, Germany's Condor Legion demonstrated that an alternative to the dive bomber could exist. Despite being thought to be unsuitable for ground attacks, the cannon-armed Heinkel He-12 and Henschel HS 123 performed admirably. In April 1947, they issued a specification for a heavily armored small aircraft with 2 or more guns of at least 20 mm and 7.9 machine guns for this purpose. They also required low-powered engines and 75 mm glazing for the cockpit windows. They anticipated that such an aircraft would be attacked by enemy troops using small arms fire, necessitating heavy protection for the cockpit, engines, and body. The pilot would be protected by bulletproof glass in the canopy. Because such an aircraft would focus on low-level head-on attacks, the cockpit would need to be close to the nose for visibility. Only 2 of the 4 companies that were asked to submit submissions were chosen. Henschel eventually won the decision. Their design work began in January 1938, and the plane was given the designation HS 129 in April. The visual mock-up was completed by the end of July, and all design details were finalized by August. The Argus S-410A0 engine, which was not very powerful, was the least appealing aspect of the aircraft design. Despite claims of 465 horsepower, it had only ever produced 430 horsepower, rendering the entire design deficient. On May 26, 1939, the ground attack aircraft prototype V1 took to the skies for the first time. Following the first flight, the prototype underwent several modifications. However, the prototype was nearly lost on June 24th during a crash landing. Throughout the autumn of 1939, the 2 original prototypes were tested and modified. They were both failing to impress due to low power and poor visibility. 2 subsequent prototypes were delayed due to material and key equipment shortages. The entire engine of the V2 had to be removed before the V1 could be repaired. On November 30th, 1939, the V2 was finally completed and flew for the first time. Both versions had serious engine issues. They were unreliable, and their performance degraded as aircraft weight increased. The V2 was eventually destroyed when it crashed due to a related failure in 1940. The V3 crashed in June 1940 and remained in a state of suspended animation until March of the following year, leaving the V1 as the only working prototype at the time. The pilots complained about the engines and visibility during the initial runs in November 1940. Pencil proposed building a larger version of the aircraft, the P-76, with 2 700 horsepower normal or 114 meters radial engines as a solution. To avoid delays, they were instructed to use French engines on the refitted airframe to the original model. Although the engine upgrade was successful, the situation was still not ideal. A new canopy design also helped to improve visibility. The HS-129's production and deployment were hampered by design complications and poor decisions by the Luftwaffe's high command. They'd underestimated the need for a tank-killing plane until it was too late in the war. During Operation Barbarossa, the German intelligence community estimated that the Soviets had approximately 10,000 battle tanks. Surprisingly, the Soviets produced more than twice as many. During the final years of the war, the Germans were prone to making such errors. Aside from the 8th production prototype and the 3 design prototypes, the HS-129 had a limited production run of 870 aircraft. This figure pales in comparison to the Luftwaffe's use of 33,000 Messerschmitt Bf 109s. Once the majority of these 870 planes were in service, the German army was already in a desperate defensive position. Although the HS-129 proved effective against Soviet tanks, they were rarely present with enough armament and in sufficient numbers, and there were never more than 5 squadrons at the aircraft for a battle. Still, the HS-129 was plagued by design flaws. It was extremely slow when fully loaded, with a top speed of less than 200 miles per hour. To make matters worse, the plane's French engines were susceptible to sand and dust, causing them to seize during flight, with no prior indication that something was wrong. After the Allies took El Alamein, some HS-129 squadrons were sent to North Africa. Their deployment was a huge mistake by the end of the battle in November 1942. The engines had poor dust filters and quickly overheated, making the aircraft unsuitable for desert battles. Almost every unit was destroyed as a result of this. They were hit by 2 sandstorms during the first engagement, forcing the Germans to ferry them west. The 7 surviving planes arrived in Tripoli by the end of December, but none of them were operational. 3 were destroyed during an air raid, and 3 more were determined to be irreparable. The only surviving plane was dispatched to the Eastern Front. At the start of 1943, a new wave of HS-129s was sent to North Africa, with planes being sent behind German lines to destroy tanks without anti-aircraft defenses that had made it past the front lines. While this reduced German aircraft losses, it also limited the HS-129's usability. Furthermore, due to newfound Allied control over the air, the planes had to be escorted. The Luftwaffe ordered all HS-129 units to evacuate as the number of available escort fighters decreased. All remaining planes were on the Eastern Front by the end of August 1943. So that is all about this prestigious project of Hitler. What do you think about this tank hunter? Tell us in the comments. Subscribe to our channel for more fascinating warplane documentaries. Thanks for watching.